are still coming in. Okay, so hi everybody. Welcome. This is actually my second panel. I think it's Tom's and Khursten's second panel as well. Lakshmi has done panels before here, but not this time, unfortunately, sadly. And anyway, so my name is James Welker, and I am a professor at Kanagawa University, and I do all kinds of research on gender and sexuality, mostly in Japan, mostly in post-war Japan. And if you know who I am, you know that I do a lot of work on BL, and we're here to meet me and some of the contributors, some of the many, like 21 contributors altogether of this lovely book here, Queer Transfigurations, Boys Love Media in Asia. With me today are Thomas Baudinette, Jungmin Kwon, Lakshmi Menon, Khursten Santos, Peiti Wang, and I will let everyone introduce themselves right before they talk. And I want to talk a little bit about this book, just to kind of give you a behind the scenes look at how long these things take to put together. And so basically this book started as a conference in 2017. That poster was designed by Khursten. Yeah, it's a beautiful poster with artwork by Penguin Frontier. Please follow him. His art is so beautiful. And he's from Malaysia. He mainly works in Malaysia, I think, still. And so this symposium was actually planned in 2016, late 2016. Tom and Dredge Kong and the late, great Mark McClelland and Peter Jackson and I were having a discussion in 2016. Peter, who is a professor of Thai studies, he wrote to all of us and said, hey, what's going on with all this BL stuff, which was just starting to boom in Thailand? And somewhere in that discussion, somebody said we should do some sort of conference. And because my university fortunately has some money, I was able to bring a lot of people in, and we had this fantastic conference. It was really exciting, and we had bunches and bunches of papers, and we had a lot of fun. And the original, so this was going to turn into a book. That was the plan from the beginning, but there was an editor in Japan who came, and although she really doesn't understand English, she was just overwhelmed by all of the interesting papers, and she said, we need this in Japanese. And so we ended up doing this book, Biel ga Hiraku Tobira, which is BL opening doors, and half of the chapters were translated into Japanese and published here alongside works, a few contributions by really well-known BL scholars, Fujimoto Yukari, Hori Akiko, Mori Naoko, and Ishida Hitoshi. And so if you read Japanese and you want to do some reading practice, if Japanese is your first language and English is your second, or Japanese is stronger, you could get both and you could read alongside each other. In any case, this came out in 2019. And because there are so many contributors, our book, Queer Transfigurations, came out in just this past May. And the book is, I divided it into sections based on region: East Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. And one of the things that, when I was kind of working this out, one of the things that Lakshmi said was, hey, these borders don't make any sense, because like none of these fandoms are contained within borders. And it's true. They really, truly aren't. And as everybody here knows, the fans are all over the map, crossing borders. But there was just no other kind of neat way to organize everything. So we did end up dividing it I ended up dividing it into regions. And then we have a final chapter or section that focuses on chapters that discuss, it's middle of the afternoon for me. I shouldn't be tired. But anyway, chapters that discuss multiple regions. So we have a lot of chapters on China, talking about, for the first chapter by Yanri Xu and Ling Yang is talking about kind of this intersection between Danmei, which I believe all of you know is BL coming from China, Danmei, BL, and Slash, kind of talking about how they they're interacting with each other. And then we have other chapters on China, including one that Tom will talk about in a little bit. I don't want to go into a lot of detail about this because you can find out more online. if you want. We also have chapters looking at, we have a chapter looking at Hong Kong and politics, and that's tricky now, as all of you know, because of what's going on in China in terms of the crackdown on all sorts of freedom of all sorts of expression, including BL. And then we have several chapters on South Korea, which is another important site of BL production. And Jungmin Kwon will be talking about her chapter in a few minutes. And we have one chapter on Taiwan. We should have more because Taiwan is also an important site. But all of these places are, there's so much cool BL culture going on. And Peiti Wang will be talking about her chapter in a little while. We have a number of chapters on Southeast Asia, which, as you know, is a great, you know, there's a lot of flourishing of BL, including in places like Indonesia. And although we don't have a chapter specifically on Malaysia, Khursten does talk about Penguin Frontier, this beautiful artist here, in her chapter. So we've got Indonesia, the Philippines, Singapore, and then of course Thailand. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone today talking about Thailand specifically, but if you have questions about Thailand, I am sure Tom would be happy to answer them based on his research that he's doing right now. He's actually in Thailand, which I'm sure he's thrilled with. Those guys are probably real and live behind you, just watching you, right? And then we have, unfortunately, just one chapter on South Asia, on India, and that's Lakshmi. And I hope Lakshmi will mention why there's only one chapter. Like, what's the deal? Why? About that. And then border crossing, we've got a few chapters kind of looking at how BL is crossing borders, either kind of a comparative approach, looking at artists in different regions, or looking at actually like the artists or fans in different regions and seeing the similarities and differences. Or the final chapter by Asako Saito is looking at how a certain narrative is represented in different places and how different fans and different cultures work or interact with the same narrative. So that is kind of my introduction. And I guess we can go ahead and go in the order of the book, which is Tom, and then Jungmin, and then Peiti, and then Lakshmi, and then Khursten. So please, again, introduce yourself, say where you are, what you're working on, and then tell a little bit about your chapter, and then we'll just take questions from everybody. Okay, so thank you.
Okay, well, I'll launch straight in. So thank you, James, for bringing us all together and to talk about this fantastic collection, which I'm thrilled to be a part of. My name's Thomas Baudinette. I am a senior lecturer in Japanese and International Studies at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, though I am talking to you all today from my hotel room here in Bangkok, where I have been attending a Thai BL fan meeting, Thai News Polka the Journey. Some of you may be familiar with that. But my chapter in this collection is part of an earlier project that was kind of spinning off from my PhD, looking at Chinese gay tourists who travel to Japan and their experiences in Japan. And the chapter really is exploring about how their fandom for BL manga operated as a site for them to, when living in China, kind of deal with the heteronormativity and homophobia that they faced in their day-to-day lives. And then when they came to Japan and faced anti-Chinese sentiment and xenophobia, particularly in Japan's kind of gay nightlife districts, and I focus specifically on Shinjuku Nichome, a gay nightlife district in the capital of Tokyo, how BL transformed into a resource to keep pushing forward fantasies of Japanese boyfriends and like aspirational desires. So it's part of a broader project of mine looking at the resonances of boys' love in a variety of different contexts. Some of you may know me from my work on Thailand, and whilst I don't contribute to this book from my research in Thailand, I do have a book completely dedicated to Thailand coming out at the end of the year, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But it really is part of my broader work to explore how BL operates as a resource of hope, a term that I actually coined for this chapter. It's basically thinking about how boys' love isn't just this kind of fun thing, of course it is, but also how it operates for various LGBTQ people across East and Southeast Asia as a tool to make sense of gender and sexuality, particularly their queer desires, and then to combat their disenfranchisement within society. So it's part of a broader commitment that I think James and I both share, as well as everyone in this panel, that Boys Love is a political tool as much as a kind of tool for enjoying the kind of the intense pleasures of handsome boys making out and falling in love. So my work really does focus on this, and this contribution to this chapter and my participation in this conference really pushed me to think about boys love in ways that I never had before. So yeah, that's really my contribution to this book. I recommend you grab a copy if you're a Japanese speaker. My chapter was also previously translated into that Japanese version as well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing some questions. And as James emphasized, whilst our colleagues Puin and Dredge aren't here, who wrote about Thailand, I can cover Thailand as well, since I am right here, right now. Okay, thanks.
So Jungmin, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. First of all, I would like to thank this conference and James and other contributors, and yeah, for having me here in this great opportunity to talk about my research and others' research about BL. Thank you so much. And I am Jungmin Kwon. I am in Portland, Oregon, United States of America. I teach at Portland State University. I teach film, media, and Korean pop culture here. So let me briefly introduce my chapter, which is titled The Commercialization and Popularization of Boys Love in South Korea. Despite the stigma associated with the BL culture, BL fandom, its visibility in transnational popular cultures has been increasing in recent years, as we all know now. Like, you can see a lot of participants in this panel. And we see a lot of BL books available in commercial bookstores, and a lot of TV shows and films based on BL narratives. And this is a cultural phenomena that can be strongly found in South Korea now, which culture is somewhat conservative and cisgender, heterosexual, male-oriented. In recent years, surprisingly, the presence of male-male love stories has become very robust and very present in the Korean mainstream media market, which is the focus of my chapter in this anthology. So my chapter aims to offer an overview of the entire process of how BL has been commercialized and popularized in South Korea. So basically, it explores kind of the ups and downs of Korean BL culture, like how BL culture emerged in Korea, and then how it was marginalized once, and then in the 2010s, how it became a popular media commodity in South Korea. So my chapter begins with the history of BL fandom by examining local BL content like BL webtoon or digital comics, or BL online and offline novels and fan fiction or fanfic. The chapter also investigates the recent popularization of BL content, particularly novels, digital novels, in the online publishing market, with a strong focus on its incorporation into commercial capital system. Now, BL is not only located in the top menu, but it also constitutes 30 to 60% of all content on well-known web literature sites such as Lexing Comics. So lastly, I offer an in-depth interview with an active BL author, which I believe the key part of my chapter. By interviewing this well-established and popular BL author, I wanted to share some industry perspectives from her, and also fully contextualize the establishment of male-male love stories as a genre in the Korean publishing industry. So based on the interview, I kind of unpacked more political issues like the low-paid labor of BL creators and the growing gap between the industrial stakeholders and BL authors who cannot fully take advantage of the digital platform system. This chapter is a follow work to my academic book that I briefly showed earlier that I published in 2019. So my book deals with the influence of BL cultures on Korean society based on more than 40 interviews with BL related people. So if you're curious about specific BL fandom in South Korea, I recommend you read my book as well as this awesome BL collections titled Queer Configurations. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I guess that brings us to Peiti.
Hi, thank you, James, and everyone. Good morning. Not good morning. Sorry. Okay, my name is Peiti Wang, and I'm from Taiwan. I teach otakuology and gender in several universities in Taiwan, and I edit some books on sociology of anime and comics. And currently, I am working at the preparatory team of National Comic Museum. So I'm going to read my draft because I'm not good at time control. So okay, my chapter about Taiwanese is about Taiwanese BL fans' reaction to the same-sex marriage legalization. Taiwan became the first country in Asia to recognize gay marriage in 2019. And before that, in 2016, when the same-sex marriage bill was about to be passed, Taiwan society is severely divided into two opposing groups. And among many protests, the largest event was the Marriage Equality Council held by LGBT associations. And I noticed there is a strong supporting voice among BL fans. So my friend and I, we started a campaign to call BL fans to participate in this concert. However, these BL fans reveals highly divergent attitude on whether or not it was appropriate to use their identity as Fujoshi to support the campaign. So in order to understand this situation, I conducted an online survey and online forum observation. And I find out the debate here is not about whether to support same-sex marriage, but about whether Fujoshi identity should be used in this public event. So those fans rejected to join the campaign. They're mainly because they were uneasy about their identity turning public. They chose to hide their identity for many reasons. For example, homosexuality was taboo, and others considered sexual fantasy and that sexual fantasies are personal and private. And moreover, they worried the social impression on Fujoshi would be negative. So this is also linked to the practice of self-imposed regulations among BL fans. So on the other hand, the other group of BL fans were aware of the self-imposed regulation is a kind of self-discrimination, and they criticized how the low-profile principle demonstrate how exactly how Fujoshi were replaced in the society. And they felt offended when others told them not to disclose their identity. And also, some fans explained how and why they believe showing their Fujoshi identity to support the LGBT right is meaningful and significant. So finally, no matter which camp they were in, BL fans were in favor of same-sex marriage by a surprisingly high percentage. In my survey, over 96% of BL fans agree that every person's right should be ensured equally by law, no matter what their sexual orientation is. And in addition, 93% agree that same-sex marriage should be included in the civil code. And also it is also important to note that in the course of the debate, many other issues related to gender and sexuality has been highlighted, such as patriarchal or heterosexual hegemony, misogyny, homophobia, etc. Those who participate in this online discussion somehow acquire knowledge of gender theories. So therefore, I concluded in Taiwan, the participation in BLO culture is becoming more and more prevalent among girls, and it is changing their view of gender relations. BLO fans are empowered from their fandom practice and to challenge the existing patriarchal gender structure and to assert that female desire requires serious attention. And I consider this empowerment as rejoice power. So this is my chapter.
Great, thank you so much, Peiti. I'm going to add a link in a second in the chat. So Peiti was talking about the attitudes about LGBT issues and same-sex marriage among Taiwanese BL fans. I'm in a research group with a few Japanese scholars, and my colleagues just released a study a few months ago where they surveyed thousands of BL fans and about their attitudes. I think it was around 10,000 female BL fans in Japan about their attitudes toward LGBTQ issues. And they also interviewed they surveyed a few hundred gay and bisexual men about their attitudes about BL, their thoughts about the genre of BL. And I'm going to post a link. It's in Japanese, but it's an open access survey. So even if you don't read really good Japanese, you might be able to work and find the charts and stuff. So anyway, so let's move on then to Lakshmi.
Hello. So I'm Lakshmi Menon. I teach in a college in India under the University of Kerala. Some of you might have caught my panel last year in which I talked about Indian BL fans. And I'm basically going to talk about where that research started, which is back in 2016, when I did this survey trying to figure out where India's BL fans were. That was entirely my purpose, like where are the Indian BL fans? And mostly I looked at anime and manga fans because live action BL hadn't quite gotten any kind of traction in India back then. So I found all of like 25 BL fans who are willing to talk about their experiences or admit that they were fans. And most of them were in the main cities of India. So I'm just going to very briefly talk about what I found from this study and where I'm going from there right now. So what I found was that most of the people who responded to my questions or to my survey were women between the age of 16 and, well, their late 30s or 40s. And most of them were in the big cities of India. They had experiences. They found BL through, obviously through fandoms of anime and manga. But they were unwilling to ever really admit to being BL fans because India's anime and manga fan spaces, even today, are extremely male dominated and very likely to, they keep using a lot of very homophobic language and gay slurs, and even today, and terms like fujoshi bait, which just are extremely triggering, and yaoi fan service, another extremely triggering term for me. But I did find that within this, the fans who did discover BL and who did admit to being interested in BL I found out that they identified as women, as I said. And they were unwilling at first to admit to being BL fans for two reasons. One being, of course, what I mentioned earlier about Indian anime fan spaces being so male and very broy. And the other being the fact that India's society in itself is not very welcoming to women talking about sexuality, or actually anybody talking about sexuality, but women talking about sexuality in any way is considered to be something that doesn't happen. It's another reason why, as James mentioned before, it's possibly one of the reasons why there isn't a lot of work on BL coming from India, because it had been difficult back then to find people willing to talk about it. The other thing is that despite this, I did find the people that I did talk to did talk about BL in two very interesting ways. The first is that for many of them, BL was the way that they found out about the LGBTQ community. The existence of gay people in the world was introduced to them through shipping anime characters and through BL and fan-made content, BL fan-made content. The other is that while a lot of them did appreciate what BL was doing and did find BL as a great a gateway to this kind of discourse, they also were able to place themselves in a position where they could critique the problematic parts of BL. So a lot of them, they talk about how they could engage with BL in a kind of critical manner and not just completely accept it as it is. And so they could find out where it could be helpful, but also in a certain, it could have harmful aspects as well. So I did find both aspects of this in India's BL fans back then. And some of them did go on from here to talk about how it's because of BL and the kind of messages that they got from BL manga and anime that they became activists themselves, or they discovered their own identities. Again, where India resonates with a lot of similar studies in other parts of Asia and the world. Since my original study, I think 6 years have passed and things have really changed. Mostly, and this is what I talked about last year, and it's what I'm working on right now, because since 2019 and the coming of the Untamed, and 2020, and the fact that everybody was stuck at home, BL has is moving in India in a big way. We're experiencing something where my college, the place where I teach, which was earlier a place where there was like maybe no people were talking about the local films. Now I found the names of BL characters written on desks. I found Sarawat and Time and Bright and Metawin written somewhere while I was invigilating a class, and I'm like, where am I? What's happening? And we had Kinposh, the series, appearing in a mainstream Indian newspaper. So we're getting somewhere, and I think I'm like, something's turning on. I'm like, okay, now I have something to work with. And there are more people working on BL in an academic sense. I see people getting in touch with me right now. And if there's anybody watching who wants to, yay, let's talk about it. Because, I feel like it's coming into the academic spaces in India as well. So I think we have a lot of, scope for where we're going from here. So that's me. Read the book for the earliest study on BL in India.
Great, thank you so much. And then finally, but definitely not, I don't know, last but not least kind of thing, because Khursten is doing all kinds of fun stuff. Khursten.
Yes, hi, good morning, good afternoon. And I think my talk yesterday was around this time, so I know there are like 4 a.m. people who logged in. So happy early morning to you. Thank you so much, James, and thank you so much, Kwon, for hosting this panel and giving us a space to talk about our work. So I'm Khursten Santos, or Khursten, as many people know me online. I teach, I'm an assistant professor at the Ateneo de Manila University's Japanese Studies program, and I teach East Asian gender history and Philippine history, and to a certain extent Japanese culture, among many other things. And so this chapter that I wrote was, I would say, the beginning of a research that I've been doing for the past few years with regards to transnational negotiations of BL media, or at least in this case, I was looking at doujinshi culture in the region, specifically Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and so on. And this was really like the early version of it. I was just looking at specific artists. At the time, I was still a student in Australia, hence I was very fortunate to have met Pirates. And then through my own connections here in the Philippines, I also managed to speak with Cinnamon Rub. And with my connections in Malaysia, I was able to work and talk with Penguin Frontier. And basically, I was trying to understand the ways in which they tried to depict BL, and also the ways in which they negotiated how to portray BL in spaces that were quite conservative when it comes to queer expression and so on. And certainly the different fan spaces where these artists navigate is nowhere like Comiket, where you just plaster in their R18 or put stickers and everything to make it all work. It's a little more complex than that. Back then, I think I did this research in 2016. It's a little different now. When I was able to update this research in 2018, and I managed to visit Indonesia and Malaysia again, and Singapore to a certain extent, and how sometimes just having the medium itself already flags people that it's queer content, and that organizers are now finding ways to protect or find measures, to encourage this kind of expression within ways that are still acceptable publicly, but also accommodating for those who wish to tap, some of these nastier works. But it's been a fun research, and this chapter is a wonderful look into the different ways BL have been, as the term I used back then was glocalized, because of these particular local, I guess, negotiations in terms with queer expression. So there, and yeah, so what I'm doing now is, to a certain extent, an extension of that. I'm also looking into Philippine BL culture with Tom, and to a certain extent, I should actually tap Lakshmi, because I'm now seeing a lot of BL fan works with, one of the things I'm looking into is Philo AUs, and I think I mentioned this last year with Lakshmi, that I'm seeing a lot of Desi AU as well, and Indonesian AU, and we should all come together and see why this kind of intense localization of BL is happening. And I think it's really great, and it's really empowering to many people are looking into queer expression and queer identities. So there.
Great, thank you so very much. So a couple of things. I'm seeing a lot of enthusiasm in the chat for the book, and lots of people saying that they're going to buy it, and I'm so happy, because I'm so glad that we're able to share all of this diverse research on BL fandoms all around Asia. I'm going to add something in the chat about an issue of the academic journal Macadamia that I edited. It came out in 2020, and it has contributions from Khursten and Lakshmi and Tom. And it's just a general, the main part of the issue is a general look at just queerness in Japanese media consumption. And Tom has a chapter on BL fans in the Philippines, gay male BL fans in the Philippines, and how they see Thai BL or SAW, because things have changed so quickly, how they were seeing Thai BL versus Japanese BL. And then there's a section at the end where I wanted to kind of get in writing just different, like what I called snapshots, looking at BL fandoms or Yuri fandoms, kind of queer fandoms in different places. And so there's, if I don't disappear, right? I'm still there if I do this. So there are sections, there's an interview between Khursten and Fen Garza, who are looking at, or they're talking about organizing queer media or BL fan events in Mexico and the Philippines. There is something on Fujoshi culture and Fujoshi spaces in Mexico City, something about a Thai BL musical, or not a Taiwanese BL musical. And then Lakshmi's got an introduction to what she's calling Sri Lanka's first Sinhalese BL manga. We've got somebody looking at kind of shipping and BL culture in Vietnam. We've got things on translation and local BL in Italy, Germany, role playing in Russia, commercial BL in Poland. And then we've got finally queer cosplay in Israel, and then an examination of BL fandom on in Arabic language YouTube channels. So there's a lot of really fun stuff. I'm going to post the link as soon as I stop talking. So maybe check that out. That brings me to one point about interacting with academics. If you already interact with people like Lakshmi or Tom or Khursten on Twitter or whatever, then you already know this. But we're mostly approachable and mostly very friendly. And if you are at a university and you can't afford something, ask the university to buy the book. If you are, especially in the global north, mostly it's possible, and they should have a copy of this. Come on, let's be honest. Everybody's going to want to read it. But if you are not able to get, if you are in the global south, if your university doesn't have that kind of money, usually if you write somebody, they will send you a copy of their chapter. I do get people asking me for copies of whole books, and it's like, no, I need the publishing industry to continue to publish these books, so I need the books to be sold. But if you ask me for a copy of a chapter or something like that, I'm happy to send it to you. Beyond that, I think we should just open up the floor. Tom, you have to leave in 20 or 30 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, I do. I have appointments here in Bangkok. So
okay,
if anyone has any questions for me,
yeah, so please enter questions in the chat for everybody, but we're gonna kind of take a few for Tom at the beginning, and then I think everyone else can stay. We've got about 50 minutes, so lots of time for lots of fun. You can ask about the book, you can ask about people's current research, you can ask about how academics do research, anything you want, so please. Or while we're waiting for questions, if anyone has questions for each other, please do that. I can't think and type at the same time to enter the URL for the macadamia thing.
I'm assuming it's gone quiet because everyone's thinking of brilliant questions. Okay, Veronica has a question about gay marriage in Thailand. Same-sex marriage or marriage equality. So actually there is a huge debate over marriage equality right now in Thailand. And in fact, there is a bill before the lower house right now that was written and drafted by the opposition that has managed to pass the first reading, which will introduce changes to marriage law. The current ruling party, which is, because I'm in Thailand, there's certain things that I can't say just legally, just gonna put it out there. Let's just say that they don't have the greatest track record when it comes to the rule of law. They introduced a civil union partnership. But one thing that my research on Thai BL has really demonstrated is that the Thai BL industry and the actors that appear within it are strongly committed to raising awareness of the rights of LGBTQ individuals, and they are proactive within the debate for same-sex marriage here. A number of them quite vocally. Off the top of my head, one kind of really famous guy is a guy named Mick Sahapap, is extremely vocal in his support of LGBTQ rights. And he's with GMM TV, which is one of the big producers here of BL. So that is something I would say with regards to same-sex marriage. So it is looking increasingly likely that Thailand may be the next country in Asia to legislate in some way for marriage equality, whether that will be the civil union bill from the dominant powers here, or whether that will be the same-sex marriage bill that is going up from the opposition, we don't know. And of course, it is all dependent upon royal decree as well. I've got a question also, about
is it the one underneath about the beautiful boys?
Who are the beautiful boys behind you? Oh, they're Japanese actually. So these are Johnny's idols. So on my this is my right, so your left. That is Michieta Shunsuke from Naniwa Danshi, and here is Ren Meguro from Meguro Ren from Snowman. They appeared in a BL series called Kieta Hatsukoi, My Love Mix-Up, last year, and it was the first time that Johnny's, the major male idol company in Japan, actively contributed to the BL industry in Japan. They've done so in many kind of subtle ways through a practice known as idol shipping. And if you're curious to learn more about idol shipping, I am giving a panel on it tomorrow morning in CDD time. But yeah, so that's who these guys are. They're Japanese, they're not Thai. And then just quickly to answer the one question from someone about gay Chinese tourists in Japan, why did I look at gay Chinese tourists? I also looked at Korean tourists as well, because they were prominent within the space. And I also speak Chinese and I speak a little bit of Korean. So I was able to interview them. And whilst I was doing the field work that the chapter is based on, which was actually conducted in 2013, so almost 10 years ago now. They were probably the most prominent group of people. And I guess within the question, there is, you know, other nationalities out of conservative countries. I mean, the gay district of Tokyo is a melting pot, but I was particularly interested in what appears in the Japanese context as a bit of a hidden minority, which is other East Asians, because, you know, they don't visibly stand out like people such as myself or people from Southeast Asia or South Asia. So I really just looked at it because of, I'm an anthropologist, and when things happen in the field, you follow your leads and you follow your instincts. So that's really why I began looking at that group of people, but they were a significant group of people. I started looking at them because there were so many of them there, at least in 2013. Things are, of course, different now, COVID, but even, you know, 2015 to 2018, they really died off for very, very many reasons. So that's yeah, I'll kind of end my little contribution there and hand over to others, unless anyone else has any other pressing questions.
So there's a couple more questions for Tom, and then since everybody else, since we can all stay, maybe we should just jump to those. So what is your current project? So this is from Kate. What is your current project? She said everyone can answer, but maybe Tom can answer first. What are you working on now? So maybe you can talk a bit more on that.
So I have two projects. One of the reasons why I'm in Manila, in Thailand, despite being, you know, a massive fan of Thai BL personally, is that I have a forthcoming book with Bloomsbury on Thai Boys Love. It's called Boys Love Media in Thailand, Fans, Celebrity, and Transnational Asian Queer Popular Culture. It isn't formally listed on their website yet, but I will put a link to my to a link on my personal website if people are curious. So this is a book exploring the rise of boys love dramas in Thailand and looking at how it has both traveled from Japan, its influences from Korea, and then how it spreads to Southeast Asia and back to Japan. So I don't think we should be too resentful of Johnny's. They're changing. I actually, sorry, just to address a question in the chat, I actually do consulting work with Johnny's, and they are beginning to really engage in LGBTQ issues. So keep your eyes peeled. Yes. So yeah, and my other project is that I've received a grant from the Academy of Korean Studies to look at LGBTQ fans of K-pop and the role of K-pop fandom in shaping the experiences of LGBTQ fans during the COVID-19 pandemic, with case studies from Australia and from the Philippines. So if you are a Filipino fan of K-pop who identifies as a member of the LGBTQ community in either Australia or Philippines, please drop me a line. I would be more than willing to talk to you about that. And I am giving a panel tomorrow that draws upon some of that research into K-pop fandom and the intersections of BL. Okay, I really feel like I've dominated the discussion, so I will leave it to everyone else.
So yeah, so why don't we just continue that? Is there anything that anyone wants to add about what they're currently working on? It doesn't have to be BL related, but it can be. Anyone? Lakshmi, Peiti, Jungmin, Khursten?
I mentioned
Okay.
mine earlier already, so I'll leave it to Jungmin and Lakshmi and Peiti.
Okay.
Okay, I can jump in briefly. My research interest kind of has moved recently. So my first book was about how the straight women's fandom for gay romance has influenced the Korean society and by extension, the world, I would argue. And while researching that topic, I found out that there was incredibly insufficient amount of academic research on LGBTQ plus issues. So I started working on that project. So since 2019, and I'm supposed to finish up this book, I'm working on South Korean mainstream popular culture about queer people and then their love. So my chapters are divided into film, TV show, and the web content. And celebrity, I mean queer celebrity, and I have been interviewed almost 50 queer identified media professionals and filmmakers and webtoon artists and kind of all kinds of media related people, as well as queer identified media consumers. So that's my current project, and hopefully you can see the book published soon within kind of 1 or 2 years.
Great, thank you. Yeah, academic publications take a long time, quite often.
Yeah, it is so true.
Yeah, they take a long time. Lakshmi, you unmuted for a second.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought I'll let Jungmin go first. So as I mentioned earlier, I am still looking at BL fans in India and hoping to find, and definitely finding more and expanding the work in this chapter to live action and Thai BL fans. And it's growing so much. And ideally, I would like to look at BL as it is in Greater South Asia, because even though Indian fans have been most vocal about it, I have found fans of BL in Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal at least, and maybe a couple in Pakistan. And these are not even counting, obviously, diaspora fans who are in other countries, because that's a whole other thing. And I did find, since you mentioned the Macadamia, the issue, the same artist who I spoke about in that issue, who had the Sinhalese manga, has a whole South Asian, Sri Lankan BL manga, which is now on Webtoons. It's called This Fluffy Love. I'll put and it's like 100% Sri Lankan, and it's really fascinating that it finally exists, that there is actually South Asian BL. So that's great. But yeah, what I'm working on right now is Indian fans of Thai BL, and mostly that's what I'm looking at, because that's the hole that I've fallen into, and I find it really interesting how this movement is happening around me. And I have a lot more people who are willing to talk about it, and I think it could be interesting. And one of my co-researchers, Asna, is here as well, I think, and she knows where that's going. So yeah, let's see. So that's my work at present. I'm still stuck in BL now that the PhD is done.
I think a lot of people here are very happy you're stuck in BL and still doing that. Peiti, did you have anything you wanted to add to what you said earlier?
Okay. About my currently work on the any academic research is, unfortunately, I'm not doing anything about BL, because right now I'm doing the preparation for the National Comic Museum. So I just curated this exhibition behind me. Is about memory of Taiwanese comics. So recently, of course, I have to do a lot of administrative job about the preparation of museum. But on the other hand, I also pay a lot of attention on how it comes to the BL community in Taiwan, because this article I wrote was in 2017. So it was many years later now, and it has a lot of change. And BL culture right now is totally different as it was before. And a lot of fandom right now, they are into Thai BL drama, and a lot of BL drama instead of comics. And they talk a lot about the reality gay LGBTQ community instead of like it is just a fantasy. So this kind of change is very interesting, and someday I might want to go back to do this kind of observation and research maybe. Mm-hmm.
So if you get a chance, I don't know anything about the National Museum, but if you get a chance to go to Taipei, I was there a couple of years ago, and Peiti has been involved in, it's called Comic Base, is that right? Is it the Comic Base? Yeah, and so she's been involved in this really fantastic, basically a center that celebrates Taiwanese comics, but they also have all these, if you read Chinese, they have all these wonderful Taiwanese books on comics, Taiwanese comics, but also global comics and translations of stuff from Japanese. It's a really fantastic place. So I hope that you can find it when it's open and go So as far as myself, I did a presentation yesterday, I did a panel yesterday on trans, very broadly defined, trans fans of BL, Yuri, and other kinds of queer media, including trans people represented in manga and anime and so forth. And that's part of a larger project I'm working on with Fujimoto Yukari, Kazumi Nagaike, Ishida Hitoshi, that's looking kind of a comparative look at the interrelations between the LGBTQ communities and culture around the world and fandoms of BL and Yuri and so forth, especially coming from Japan. But as Tom has written, and as I think all of us at this point are writing, like BL is sort of from Japan, Yuri is sort of from Japan, but now it's sort of from a lot of places. There are lots of centers of BL culture. So we've been traveling around and going to fan events. And we're also doing talks like this, which I think is important for academics. Most of the academics working on BL culture are in some ways part of the fandom, but not everybody. And I'm sort of kind of on the border, on the edge of the fandom myself. But I think it's important that we share our work because, you know, you all are not necessarily everyone here, but everybody's contributing to our research by just, first of all, just being by being part of the fandom. But a lot of people answer surveys or they talk to us when we go to events and so forth. So anyway, so I'm glad that we are able to have this and so many people are able to join us. I want to go back to some questions. One of them is related to that, and this is from Kendra. This is all the way back at 1:11 my time, 1:11 p.m. And Kendra writes, I'm almost done with the book. Thank you. How difficult was it for you to get people willing to do interviews? And this could be for anybody. So for those of you who did interviews, which is a lot of people, how difficult was it?
I just want to say, I want to reiterate James's call for if you're a fan and you're familiar with academics, please contribute to our research, because actually getting interviews is hard. There's so many fans out there, and yet like getting an interview is hard. So, you know, I spammed information in the chat about like K-pop fandom, Australia LGBT, Philippine LGBT. I need interviewees. Like, I'm desperate. Like, I need to. This research is important, and fans' voices are important because fandom is such a huge force for good in society. And yeah, there may be some problems as well, but like, I think that we need to destigmatize some of the fandom with our work. So if you can contribute to anything academic, it is really great. And you know, I am a fan myself, so I understand where it's coming from. So, you know, if you come and talk to me, I promise you a good time. It isn't always just boring academic stuff. But I just see a question from Ikari. So if you don't mind, James, I'll pick this up because I do have to go in 4 minutes. So live action adaptations in more traditional literatures, there been any depictions of Thai BL in a manga or comic format similar to, yeah, so actually one of the things that's really cool is that Japan is picking up on Thai BL and they're transforming it into comics. So if you're into Thai BL or like you want to learn more about Thai BL and how it's like different, you can get comicalized versions of some of the popular series, but it isn't a comic culture here. It is a novel culture and a live action culture. And I think that it's important to kind of recognize that in some parts of the world, BL is not comics. And the simple assumption of BL with comicalized form is something that in my research I'm trying to quash. Because whilst, you know, for some people that's what you're into, great. For other people, such as myself, I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of comics. So I don't get into manga, I don't get into webtoons. Live action for me is what's fun. And, you know, Thailand has filled that gap. Taiwan has filled that gap. And this year, Korea is beginning to fill that gap. And I think that Japan is now beginning to play catch up in that space as well, which is kind of why I've been brought on to help Johnny's and Associates. Yeah, so that's a quick answer to that.
Thank you. So maybe should we go ahead and let you go, Tom, so you can go off and do more research and fun things in Bangkok, and maybe, yay, thank you so much, Tom. All right. So anyone else want to talk about the difficulty of finding or getting people to be willing to interview, whether it's artists, and I think Khursten and both Jungmin both interviewed artists, or Peiti, you were interviewing fans, or at least surveying them, and Lakshmi, I guess you were just sort of doing online surveys. Anyone want to comment about this?
I think on my end, it's because I had to find the artist and tap them. I think it also involved years of work to kind of develop a network to be able to know who to contact, how to contact, etc. Because on their own, they'd probably be quiet in their corner of the internet. But I've been quite fortunate that the artist, for example, Penguin Frontier, he's been quite Penguin Frontier, Cinnamon Rub are private individuals, and they want to protect their privacy. But because they know that this is for a much larger understanding of the culture, they were more than happy to engage and participate in the research. So I think I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate that I was able to tap these artists. I'm not sure for others if it was more difficult for them, but so far, I wouldn't say it's easy, because still to establish that network involves hard work. It involves putting them in your Twitter timeline, engaging with them, etc. for years. So yeah, I'm not sure for others, but for me, I've been fortunate that has been the case.
Right, and I think that we all benefit from that. Just the Penguin Frontier graciously let me use his cover art on both of the books that came out of the thing of the convention. And I'm sure that is because of the relationship that Khursten established with him, right? He's very happy to cooperate with scholars now because of people like Khursten making this kind of effort. So, Peiti.
Yes, because my research is just doing the online survey. So it is very easy for me to get the respondents. And actually, I got too much answered. I have 4,000 respondents to answer my questions. So this online survey is totally fine, because Taiwanese Fujoshi is very willing to answer this kind of questionnaire. But if you want to interview face-to-face, or now maybe people want to do the online interview, according to my students who already do a lot of research, they actually have no problem to get them to answer, because most of the researchers, these young researchers, they actually were also themselves were Fujoshi, so they have a lot of attachment to this they are interviewing. So I think they are willing to get the answer to open their even talking about their sexual desire to the researcher. So I think this is very openly good in terms in Taiwan for these Fujoshis. But on the other hand, right now a lot of students want to do the research on Fudansi, like male BL fans, and maybe this is a little bit difficult right now, maybe because it's a lot of people want to come about and say they are dancing. Yeah. So yeah, this.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Kazumi Nagaike's chapter in this book is she interviews Fudanshi, and I'm always surprised at the questions she's asking and the detailed sexual responses that some of the Fudanshi provide. Of course, it's anonymous, but it's great. I'm grateful. I think we should all be grateful that people are willing to share very intimate details about their fantasies and what literally turns them on or what they do with BL, so we can get a better understanding about the fandom. Do Lakshmi or Jungmin, do you want to answer this question? About how hard it is?
Can I go first? Yeah. No,
Sure.
So my work, as you said, has been mostly online. So like I said, it wasn't very easy at first, because the number of people who actually answered to the question, can I contact you for more to chat a little bit more. And a lot of people are like, no. And I'm like, okay, thanks. That's not helpful at all. But the newer research, the second round that I've done has gotten a lot more responses. So it's been a little more promising now. I'm hoping to meet a few more people like admins of fan clubs and so on. But it's not easy in a country like India for people to talk about. It's even harder to find those who identify as queer or those who identify as male to actually come out and talk about it, kind of like what Peiti said, like the Fudanshi are less likely to talk. And of course, there are those who think that it's all, they watch BL and yet they think there's something inherently wrong with the idea of watching BL. So it's a struggle, but it's getting better.
Thank you. Jungmin?
Yes, my experience is pretty similar to Laksmi's. I actually have witnessed a sea change between 2012 and 2022. So in 2012, I interviewed people for my first book / doctoral dissertation. At the time, I did struggle. All the BL communities were hidden and the cultures were not very visible at the moment. So I had to spend a lot of time to find BL authors and BL consumers. I joined the virtual community. I persuaded them to participate in interview. But yeah, it was really hard. So I ended up having 9 interviews with BL authors / readers. And then I had to promise that my research would be completely anonymous and their identities would not be revealed at all. And one of the authors one of the BL authors told me that, oh, I work at a sushi restaurant and I don't want the boss of my workplace finds out my identity as a BL author. There's no kind of really low possibility that the sushi restaurant owner would read my book, but this story kind of informs us of how fearful the Korea's culture attitude toward BL at the moment. So after 10 years later, actually last year and this year, I am not struggling at all finding BL authors and consumers. So I contacted BL authors and consumers, and then mostly I get response, and just a few of them had to turn down my interview requests because their schedules are so busy and tight. But mostly they said yes, and then when we interviewed, they were kind of happy to be interviewed because they know that this could be a chance for them to advertise their work, and this could be a chance for them to let me know their work. So I can say that the BL culture is now more present and commercialized. BL authors would like to get more attention by using these chances. So yeah, over the decade, something has changes. So it was a very interesting moment for me.
Thank you. Yeah, I think maybe we've all seen a lot of changes, but particularly maybe in more conservative societies where people are more afraid to talk about sexuality, or there are religious or other kind of cultural prohibitions. I want to dig all the way back to some questions that have been coming in for quite a while. So Naomi V wrote, how is what's going on in the geopolitical world, especially China, affecting BL in Asia? Can anyone talk about that? The relationship between what's going on geopolitically and BL in Asia? Don't know.
I cannot speak for what's happening in China per se, but I can probably speak for at least how it's like here in the Philippines as for Danmei fans. And I think for Danmei fans, it's quite interesting because they're now using this really expansive regional network where I have Filipino friends who have friends in Singapore and and these Singapore friends navigate their way through different Chinese sites in order to get different fan materials related to various Danmei title ranging from, from the Untamed all the way to the Guardian and many others, And I think before the pandemic, it's quite interesting that some have even traveled to go to fan meets in relation to these. So I don't think what's interesting about China's situation is that we know that there's a problem with regards to censorship, but at the same time, we can see how they're continue to capitalize on these media, and they're more than happy to make acceptable, accessible forms of events, media, novels, games, etc., to people. And so I don't think it's been a big problem, at least here in the Philippines. There's actually a heavy thirst for we've been getting for Blush questions like, are you going to have a Danmei panel? Are you going to have a Danmei event, etc.? And I'm not an expert at it, and so I'm looking for, if there's someone who wants to talk about Danmei and Blush, you're more than welcome to. Well, we don't have an event yet, but when that time comes, please do email me, and I'd be more than happy to please set up something to talk about Danmei. But we do know, the local fans do know it's a big issue. We know that censorship is a problem. We know that there are authors, and to me, it's always a surprise when I hear people tell me that, oh, what you see in the series is, not as nasty as what's coming out in the novel, and I'm like, what does that mean? How nasty can it get? And apparently it can get really nasty. But the thing is, at the same time, there's an interesting development now where you have American publishers publishing Nanmei, and I think I'm not sure, maybe some of my panelists know better. I'm not sure how censored it is, etc. Some of the fans are, I know there were a couple of translation issues, but maybe it's a step towards getting Dami out there in the world. Yes.
Thank you. So Blush, the next Blush, which is the Manila BL fan convention that Khursten and a couple of other people are organizing. When is the next one? You don't know?
It all depends on, no, it's more about public events here in the Philippines, and how much they'd allow, and how much, I think, as moderators, we feel safe, bringing in people together again. So
yeah. Right, okay.
But yeah, we are also dying to have some kind of a Blush event soon.
Yay. It's really fun. If anyone can ever get to Manila for Blush, highly recommend it. Okay, so
I just want to add a little bit to what Khursten was saying about the Danmei and the physical copies and that kind of thing, because there's two things because I've been following what's been happening with the whole Danmei, Dangai, and what's happening with China's new rules about not releasing anything that's been shot over the past couple of years. So there is that gap. If there were several very anticipated works that are still somewhere in Tencent's vaults because of the new governmental regulations about Danmei adaptations. So that hasn't happened quite yet. The other thing is, of course, and there's still a very active fandom online that's waiting for it to, for these works, like the adaptations of Shapolang, for example, is like somewhere, and it's a very well-known work by Danmei author Priest. The other thing is the physical copies are actually not that censored as far as I know, although none of them have reached the point in the release schedule where the really spicy stuff is supposed to happen. But one of the works that's being translated right now is the husky and the white cat Chizun, which starts off right off the bat with extremely with Urha, exactly. So that's going to be interesting to see how much censorship they bring into that. But they have had a lot of issues with translators, and I think a lot of scheduling issues and problems with timing, and Seven Seas not being really good about that. But it's still great that there is like physical English copies of like legally available translations of Danmei. That's like really something to talk about. And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of debates back and forth about how the ethics of how it's going on behind the scenes, but at least, it's a step forward one way or the other.
Thank you. Anything to add? Peiti or Jungmin, should we move on
I
to the
want
next?
to
You
add,
got something, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a question like how the Danmei physical book will be published, and I would say some of them were published in Taiwan, and it doesn't need to translate it. Yeah, but actually I'm not really familiar with Danmei culture in China, so I would probably cannot say anything about that.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we go on? Nikki has a question, and it's probably a simple question, and I don't necessarily know the answer, but maybe someone does. Mickey writes, is there an existing study examining how languages with genderless pronouns affect media consumption, especially when your native language is genderless, but the fandom interacts in English? This was a kind of a comment that came up yesterday in my panel when I was talking about trans fans and pronouns and issues with that. And somebody was talking about kind of this gender neutrality in pronouns that you can use in Tagalog. I think I don't know if anyone can talk about, is there anything like that? I've not seen any studies about fandom interaction with genderless pronouns. There are probably linguistic studies about just general interactions if you're coming from a genderless language to one that forces gender pronouns on people, but that maybe nothing about fandom. So let's see, we're getting to more so Veronica, right, this is a comment, but Veronica Purcell writes, I find it interesting that traditional Asian societies will quietly accept BL and other LGBTQ fiction, but in my country, and I'm not sure where Veronica's from, but in my country, it's still not openly expressed in mainstream. I don't know if anyone has any comments about that. Do you agree with this? It's quietly accepted, BL and other LGBTQ
Oh, she's from Australia.
Okay.
This should have been for Tom, but I think Veronica, you might want to read the works of Mark McLeland. He's written quite a lot on why some particular queer expressions are controlled in Australia. And so I think if you look into his work, some of them are actually available online as well. You can read why some of these queer works are, not as out in the open, and it has something to do with regulations, obscenity laws, etc.
Okay, thank you. So Shiotan, okay, this is for Khursten. So kind of a specific question related to a past Fuzhou God panel, not from this year. Lol, ignore if no one wants to deal with it.
I responded to that already.
Oh, did you? Okay, so we're done. So it's in the chat. Okay, sorry. Sorry, there were like more than 100 comments, and if anyone else saw a question that yeah, sorry, it's mostly you all writing all these interesting comments, and I'm not finding questions. If anyone else on the panel has found a question.
I think there's a question by Yile.
Oh, okay, at 133, or I guess. Yeah. Okay, so my question is regarding the debates over BL's feminist potential, e.g. BL content is misogynistic in nature as female characters are eliminated or marginalized. Feminists should contribute to women's narratives rather than writing gay men falling in love with each other. So this debate on social media in the area of digital feminism, Hyojin Kim's chapter explored this phenomenon in South Korea. Similar debates or anti-Danmei discourse have been observed on Chinese social media since 2020. Please share your thoughts on this phenomenon. So what are your thoughts on kind of this anti-discourse, anti-BL in any context? Hyojin talks about this in her chapter on Korea, and what's really interesting about her chapter, and I hope that everyone gets the chance to read it, is she's talking about how feminine, so in certain feminist circles, so instead of just using the language of feminism, or instead of, so in the case of a lot of Anglophone anti-discourse that I'm sure you're familiar with, it's defending the representation of gay people. It should be really, you're exploiting gay men. And then there's this kind of like sub discourse that's actually really super transphobic, but it's kind of disguising itself as pro-gay. But in Hyojin's chapter, she talks about how homophobia is used to attack BL and BL consumption. But that's what Hyojin is talking about. Can anyone talk about anti-discourse? Lakshmi, you discuss it a little bit in your chapter, I think. In Peiti, I've not heard any anti-discourse in Taiwan or about Taiwan. Is there any anti-BL discourse?
Sorry. Okay, in Taiwan, actually, decades ago, maybe several decades ago, there are actually anti-BL, something like that, in the online forum, and they actually BL fans at that time were worried about the gay community, accusing them. Exploited the gay images, gay cultures in their fantasies, and this kind of things happened a long time ago. But recently, actually, after 2000 or 2010, this kind of discourse is not very. I mean, it's not really bring about. It become gay community getting realized how BL is, what BL is, and then a lot of gay community, they actually started to learn what is BL, and then BL actually has their a lot of gay community, gay friends, they like to read BL too. So they accept BL culture as a kind of, is also can be their fantasy in this way. So anti-BL things is in the past in Taiwan, but not right now. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Lakshmi or Jungmin?
Yeah, I would like to jump in because there was a very interesting case in South Korea a few years ago. So unfortunately, a group of young men sexually abused younger women, and they video recorded the abusing moment, and then they shared it online and they distributed, and thousands of people, thousands of men bought the videos and circulated. So it was a huge incident in South Korea. It was called the nth room incident. So after that, anti-BL scholars or researchers or anti-BL opinion leaders used to attack the women who consume BL for criticizing the nth room incident. So they should be totally separated. They are different issues, but men kind of attacked women for consuming gay romance and gay love stories, and they kind of defended the nth room incident by taking advantage of BL culture. So it was so unfortunate moment. They kind of retreated the whole Korean society into the old type debate, old type gender war at the moment. So the BL debate is still going on, not only between men and women, but also some women and some men, also queer people and non-queer people in South Korea. So it's definitely multi-layered. Like some gay people love BL and some straight women do not consume BL. So they are all different multiple positions. But what I found out is that, as someone in the chat already mentioned, when they attack or criticize BL, they just use it for a different purpose. They do not look into what BL actually is, what BL means to BL consumers and BL authors. So after publicizing my first book about Korean BL culture, I got some responses from the anti-BL scholars, and I kept thinking, and I actually dropped the information of the book chapter that I wrote just in case I'm doing it again. So in this book chapter, I argue that we should not look at BL only through a politically charged perspective, not the politically correct gender and sexuality perspective. It's more than that. It's about this young woman in a particular reason, their culture and their lives, and that has a long history in Asia. So I wanted to give more layers to talk about, to investigate the BL debate. But I do understand there are some concerns that I agree, like young kids can easily access via cultures online, but they can access any kind of pornographic images on Google. I mean, it's not just a problem in BL. A BL is easily being used for that criticism. So I think we should not focus on defending BL, but we kind of broaden our perspective and tell them it's not just BL. I mean, we know you're using it, and then you should know what you're doing, and you should know more about BL. So I'm still thinking about this even after I wrote this book, because there is no clear-cut answer. But if you are curious about my argument, yeah, you can refer to that book.
Thank you. I find it interesting that people wrote to you and criticized the book. That's one of the things that I've been surprised about, is I haven't really heard. I've always been expecting kind of negative feedback from some fans. But other than people writing comments about the survey that I did and their concerns about it, I haven't really had anything. I've just my personally experienced a lot of fans just being really interested in, just really interested in a scholarly perspective. Lakshmi, did you have something you wanted to talk and add about anti?
I'll just be really quick, because one of the things that I've seen when I see even today, when I see fans or anti-fans criticizing BL, is that they're borrowing very Anglophone language. They're using the language that they've borrowed from a lot of Anglophone fandoms, that words like fetishization, and just throwing around these keywords without really realizing, without doing any kind of reading on what's actually happening or understanding. For example, just this morning I saw someone criticizing, so there's a debate within the internet about yesterday's Kin Posh, the series episode, a Thai BL, which is like all over the internet right now. What's happening is I found an Indian, a gay identifying Indian Twitter user talk about how this is what's wrong with BL. Look at all these straight women talking about a gay sex scene. This is what the guys on Grindr warned me about. And I'm like, please don't get your critical theory from Grindr. Maybe do a little bit of reading and understand that that's not right. So yeah, there's a lot of misinformation happening. So that's what we need to probably consider. Yeah, Grindr is not an educational source.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you, Lakshmi. We're also at the height of BL here in the Philippines in 2020, 2021. There was also a lot of again, anti-BL talks, particularly women's engagement with BL. And of course, these are coming from gay men, and they're coming from this positioning, again, from the Western understanding, or I don't want to use Western, but at least in that queer discourse, it borrows a lot from English language scholarship, so to speak, on what queer culture should be, what is authentic queer culture, and since straight women are involved, it is less authentic, and it goes back to this question of healing, where it highlights this level of misogyny in terms of what women can and cannot do, right? Like women cannot engage in queer works. Of course they should be able to. And I think that's the feminist aspect of BL. And this book, along with even Boys Love Manga and Beyond, what Jungmin has written, highlight how straight women, can, engage in this queer practice, in this queer media, and it empowers them, And I think it was mentioned also in the chat earlier that, it's difficult for us to just look at the narratives that, because you don't see women in BL, but BL is all about boys, and it's about the celebration of romance between boys. Many BL authors also write for josei manga, and they write some of the best yuri titles out there. Yamashita Tomoko, for example, is one of my favorite writers, and her works have been deeply feminist. And so I think it's broadening what we understand of BL culture. The authors, like, for example, I think it was lauded recently, or that this webtoon of Semantic Error, for example, has a very powerful female character there. And so, it's, just try to see as much BL media and you will find your feminist answers or your feminist representation. So there.
Thank you. And that was actually a really fantastic way of kind of summing up a lot of the points of the book and a lot of what I think we're trying to do as scholars. And maybe we should, since our time is up, right? So maybe we should just let that be the end. I think, yeah, Kit's coming in. She's ready to boot us out. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, unfortunately, it is the end of the panel time, but that was fantastic information. And I know me and some of the other mods were like, God, we just want to do a podcast with all of y'all on it on anti-fan discourse. But thank you all so much. This has been fantastic. Thank you everyone in the comments for also keeping up a very lively conversation and presenting questions. Have a wonderful, I guess, day for y'all and evening for the rest of us. Thank you so much.
thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.